everyone, welcome back to the Knitteratti podcast. I'm Lincoln Ashley from Knitteratti Designs. If this is your first time watching, I hope you'll find something that you'll enjoy, and if you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back. It is absolutely great to have you back again. Okay, so this week I have, sorry you can hear my dogs drinking in the background, I have a couple of finished objects, and I've just realised I'm missing one of my new cast-ons, but we'll get to that later on. So let's get straight in there, and we'll start with these socks. So just looking for the ball band. There we go. So the yarn is Lang, and it's Yawol or Yavol or however you'd like to pronounce it, and it's 50 grams. So out of 50 grams of sock yarn, I would normally get a pair of ankle socks for my husband, and I normally have a little bit left over just out of the 50 grams. Unfortunately, even though this is sock yarn, actually does it say sock on it? I certainly bought it as sock yarn. It was under the heading of sock yarn. In fact, it even has, it's not labelled as sock yarn, but it comes with the reinforcement for the heels and the toes. So if you look back in previous episodes, you'll see what I mean there. Can I show it here? No, I ran out. So yeah, normally I would expect to get a pair of ankle socks, but the yarn is a little bit thicker, I think, than normal, so I can't even get a pair of ankle socks out of 50 grams, which, to be honest, I'm a little bit disappointed at. Now, I knew when I finished the first sock that I wasn't going to get the second, but I continued with it anyway so that I could show you how far I did get. So there's the first one. And here's the second one, and you can see I was doing the heel decreases, so you can see where I've done the gusset here. I've done my short rows, and I'm now doing the decreases for the heel. And that's it. That's where I stopped. I ran out of the reinforcement thread, and again, that was my fault. I used too much in the toes. So I ran out of that kind of down here somewhere. In fact, you can see it sticking out there. That's exactly where I ran out of it. And then I don't have enough to finish one little pair of ankle socks, which, like I said, out of 50 grams, I think the expectation of being able to make a not huge pair of ankle socks, I mean, yes, they are a men's size, but they're not, they're not made to fit Sideshow Bob. And in any other yarn, I haven't had a problem. Now, I'm not you've heard me say this over and over if you watch it all, I'm not a sock knitter, but I have knit ankle socks before, basically so that I could make sure that I had sock knitting techniques, even if it wasn't my thing. And yeah, I'm finding this a little bit disappointing. There's the stitch marker still in there. There we go. Sorry, my dog is about to bark. Okay, sorry about that. I just had to pause there to allow the barking to happen. Actually, I'm sorry if I sound a little tired in this week's video. Basically, I am knackered. There's a dog belonging to my neighbours, and they leave their dog out. Their dog barks all night, which means that every dog in 2 estates barks all night at this dog. And it is definitely this one dog, because they didn't have it a few months ago and it wasn't a problem. So yeah, it means basically that we're not getting any sleep. And it means that our dogs then are on edge all day because they haven't gotten any sleep. Sorry, I'll just pause again. Okay guys, sorry about that again. I have to say it's really wearing me out, all of this barking, and it is all down to this other dog. And I know the first instinct is to say, can you call somebody and have them take the dog in? And the only thing in this country that you can do is have the dog removed. Really, that's the only thing you can do. And because clearly these people aren't interested in the fact that their dog is upset at being left outside. And at that point then they go into the pound, and then there's no guarantee that the dog will ever make it out of the pound. And yeah, I'll just put up with the barking. I'm sorry. But yeah, so this is as far as I got. Clearly I'm going to have to, these are no use. They'll end up being heels, toes and cuffs and something else, which honestly is probably the only way for me to use the other 2 skeins of this yarn that I have. I mean, I'll definitely manage something with it, but yeah, I really wanted to get a few pairs of ankle socks just so that he could wear them with his shorts, and clearly it's not going to happen. So that's this. Price wise, it's nice to get the little reinforcement yarn, but I wouldn't be running out to buy this stuff again. You know, unless you see a skein that you really want just for the heels, toes and cuffs of other socks. You know, there's nothing particularly special about it. Once you have to buy 2 of them to get even a small sock that fits, it kind of, I'm not going to say it's comparatively expensive, but it's no cheaper than any other sock yarn that's out there, and there are other sock yarns that give better options, shall we say. So yeah, I wouldn't run out to buy this again. I'll use what I have, but I don't think that I'm going to see anything so wonderful, you know, in terms of colorways with it that I absolutely have to have it. So I'll probably stick with other, I was going to say other brands, but I do actually have some more sock yarn to show you today, which I think is from Lang Yarns. And I've just realised that I cast on in the car and I've left the ball band in the car. And it's also the project that I forgot to bring over. Just a second, I'll be back. Okay, sorry about all of the pausing. Hopefully things will go smoothly from here. So once I finish these, there's a reason why the needle is missing out of this. It's because I swiped it to cast on another pair of socks. And the ball band has gone off to work in the car with my husband. But I've checked my receipt, and this is also Lang Shawl, and it is Magic Dégradé. I want to pronounce it that way. I think it's French. And do I have the colorway here? I'm actually reading this off the receipt that I got, so you've seen this receipt before. And it's, if you can see it there, get this to focus. That's what it is, and it's Carnival is the colorway. And it's $11.99, so it's a little bit more pricey than, you see the sock yarn that this stuff was made out of? Yeah. That's this one here, the charcoal, and that's $4.99 for 50 grams. Sorry, there we go. This is $11.99 for 100 grams. So it is slightly pricier, but it's also slightly more exciting, you know, in terms of the colour that you get. I would also say that it is a little bit lighter than this yarn. But as far as I'm aware, I'm actually really curious now to compare the ball bands, because they are both listed as sock yarn when you buy them. Sorry, I'm looking at this ball band again. I'm sure that this is marketed as sock yarn because it has the reinforcement with it for the heels and toes. So I'm curious to see the ball band off this, just to compare the two, because they're from the same company and one is clearly thinner than the other. So I would say with 50 grams of this, I would get a pair of ankle socks. But however, yeah, the colourway is quite nice. You can see I've only just finished the toe increases. I haven't gotten too far with this. I actually wasn't supposed to cast on anything new this week. I was supposed to, you know, work on the stuff that I have in progress so that I can finish it off. But I couldn't help it. What I am disliking, and if anybody goes back through the episodes, you'll see I did actually do an episode on yarn twist. Look at that. Not happy with that. Now the only thing that I would like to experiment with is, before I do the next sock, I might actually re-cake this. So actually just turn it into a proper cake on my ball winder. Just to see if using the yarn, you see, twist can go this way or it can go this way. And I'm wondering if this problem is because the twist is going in the wrong direction for me. So I will try with the second sock the experiment of recaking it so that I'm using it from the other direction, if that makes sense. So if it is the direction of the twist that's causing the problem, it shouldn't be a problem after I recake it. But this is annoying. I mean, as you can see, I haven't done a hell of a lot. If you go back to the episode on yarn twist, the way that I'm pulling this from the skein or from the ball should not be causing any additional twist. It just shouldn't. I mean, I give an example of what causes the twist and how to avoid it. So I'm fairly confident that what I'm doing is not causing this. And even if it was, it shouldn't cause this much twist over such a small amount of yarn. But I have to say, this sort of thing really puts me off buying again. I mean, I love the colours. I really do. I love how this is turning out. But it's really a pain in the neck to have to put up with this, because I get so, like, I knit around and then, look, you can see that. And it's all the way up there. I knit around and then I have to deal with all of this twist. So it means that I have to stop after like 60 stitches, deal with a load of twist, and then go back to my knitting. And frankly, it's just not worth it. So, like I said, it definitely has its good points. I would be curious if any of you have used this and if you found that this is a problem. Because normally this doesn't happen for me. Like I said, it's just down to how you... Well, it's normally down to how you pull the yarn off the cake or off the ball or whatever it is. You know, it's important that you don't do something like this where you're twisting the yarn itself as you're paying out. But I actually just, and it doesn't matter where I am, I just let the yarn come off itself. And like I said, it's just been a big issue for me. So yeah, I'll let you know how it goes next week, but very disappointed, I have to say. I'm trying to assess, is my disappointment just partially down to how tired I am? I don't think it is, to be fair, this amount of twist over such a short space. Because I mean, it's not like I'm knitting a lot and then finding twist. It's literally like there's 60 stitches in a round and I'm knitting around and then having to deal with the twist. So for me, that's just too much. It's not like I'm even getting, 4 or 5 rounds and then dealing with a little bit of twist, which I could work through that. Yeah, this is just, it's really very annoying. Just such a pity because it's a really pretty yarn. But there we go. I have another finished object this week. I'll see if I can gather it up how I had it before. Here we go. Trying to recreate the picture that I have on Instagram. Yes, there is my bouquet of ruffles. So I'll just stretch it out a bit so that you can see it. You can finally see it properly now that it's off the needles. This is my square shawl made with one skein of this Manos del Uruguay lace weight superwash. It says it's superwash. I don't think I'll be testing that. There's a lot of work that went into this. I'm not going to put it in the washing machine. And it's Arboretum is the colourway. I quite enjoyed working with this, even though, sorry, just for a comparison, these are both Merino Superwash. I did not have a twist problem with this at all. Yeah, quite enjoyed working with it. As you can see, it still needs to be blocked. I haven't blocked it yet, so I'm just trying to give you some idea of how this is going to grow and change shape. Except my hands aren't actually big enough to do it justice. And just a reminder, I did use the circular cast on that I covered in last week's technical section. And I decided to go with the ruffled edge, which does mean that there were well over 3,000 stitches on my needle by the time I cast this off. But And when I put the pattern out there, if people don't want to have rounds that large, you absolutely don't have to put a ruffle on it. But I really love it. And I think once it blocks, you know, that's going to soften a bit as well, and it'll just be really nice. The one thing about knitting a square shawl is, or a round shawl, they both have similar construction. But it does mean that, you know, when you wear this, chances are you're going to wear it, you know, like a triangular shawl. And it does mean that they don't come off as large. But the way I will wear this was, I'll wear this doubled over point forward in winter. You know, I'll just have it around my neck. And that will be the perfect size by the time this is blocked, because of course it is going to stretch a bit when it's blocked. But if you only have a limited amount of yarn and you want to make something, you know, that's a bit larger, because you're, you know, obviously because it's a square shawl, I'm not sure that it's the most economic use of your yarn. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So basically, if I wanted to knit a much larger shawl, I could have taken this pattern and just done it as a triangular shawl and then extended it out using the extra yarn. And that would have made it quite a bit bigger. But you don't always want a big shawl. I mean, the midsummer shawl is quite large, you know, and when you put it on, the point is actually down past your belt. You know, if you put it on point forward, that point is down past your belt. And you don't always want something that long, because honestly, when you're walking, that can be difficult. Now, the way I wear it, it means that that point is actually taken up and wrapped around my neck again, which I actually love. I love being able to wrap around big shawls and to make something of them when they're up on your neck. So if you look at some of the pictures, you'll see how I've done that. But yeah, this is quite a contrast in that it will be quite small, but because I plan on doubling it over when I wear it, it will be really warm and it is just so squishy. You know, really enjoying the squish factor of this. And I think the colour turned out quite well. You know, sometimes you can get, because I knit this with just one skein, you know, you can get some spiralling that's quite, it takes from the pattern a bit, you know, because all you can see is the spiral. And you can see there is some, you know, there is definitely some spiralling there. But I don't think it's so much that it takes away from the actual lace itself. Yeah, I do quite like this. Which is just as well because I did knit it. And I think this looks a bit funny here, and it's just because of the way the yarn overs went when I started this out on DPNs, and I tend to be, you can see I'm a little tighter on one side than the other, but that will totally block out. I have that problem every time I start knitting on DPNs. It's just when I swap from one needle to the next one, my stitches aren't necessarily as even as I would like, but because it works itself out in blocking, I'm not pushed about it. You know, I'm not going to kill myself trying to get it right or spend extra time trying to get it right when I can just stick it in the sink and it's going to be fine. So yeah, I don't have a name for this one yet, and recent experience has made me unlikely to give out a name too far before the pattern release, because I noticed that some people, and it has been mentioned that the titles were inspired by titles that I've used. But you know what, if you're creative enough to make your own pattern, how about you put a little bit of thought into your pattern name? Because I put a lot of thought into my pattern names. It might not seem like it, but I actually do. And it's often a topic of conversation in the house, you know, should I call it this? How will it be received if I name it this or if I name it that? So, you know, if you want to, I'm reluctant to use the names. This has happened with 2 patterns now, and I'm reluctant to use the names of those patterns because I don't want to give any promotion to these other people who, I mean, fine, they're perfectly entitled to use those names, absolutely. But the fact that they're doing it and it's being mentioned that it's inspired by stuff that I've done, like, really come up with your own pattern titles, guys. Or I won't even say guys. When I say guys, it makes it sound like I'm saying it to everybody who's watching. I really mean just these two people. You know, be a little inventive. Put a little thought into it yourself. Don't just say, oh, that's a nice title, I'll use that. You know, it's not appropriate. Now, I'm saying that knowing that I have similar titles to other people, but I came up with my titles independently. Whereas, like I said, I'm not presuming without any cause that they just... Sorry, I'm starting to ramble a little. I'm just trying to make myself clear. I'm not just presuming that they saw my pattern, thought it was a good title and used it. I actually know that they did. It's been said to me that they did. And in one case, I have actually found the designer referencing how they liked the name of my pattern and that they would use it themselves. So that's just it's a little much, you know. Be inventive. It can be fun. And when you rip off somebody else's pattern and you release it at roughly the same time as you know that their pattern is coming out, what they're actually doing is trying to capitalize on my advertisement and all of the promotion that I do for my own pattern. So you know what? Promotion is not easy. Use your own pattern title and do your own promotion. Don't be that person, because it doesn't come off well. Okay, rant over. I'm sorry if that went off on a tangent too much. And I do hope that everybody managed to follow it. See, I just really like that ruffle on the bottom there. I do. It's my favourite part. I mean, I do like sorry, just hit the camera. There. You know, I do really like the lace, and I would still like the shawl if it was just the lace stockinette sections. But I do really like the ruffle. Here we go. That's enough of that. So that's this week's finished objects. I still have another couple of items to come. I'm nearly finished this, so you'll remember... Sorry, I'm just trying to put this in the right position. You'll remember last week I was in here somewhere and I said that my goal was to finish another one of the stripes, so the linen stitch stripes, and then move on to the lace. Technically, I achieved my goal, but to be honest, I haven't done as much of the lace section as I would have liked. I would have liked to have gotten at least 4 or 5 of these eyelets in, and I've only gotten 1 done, which is a pity, but it was all that I had time for this week. So, officially, this is for the Spring into Summer Cal, a title that I came up with myself, even though I know other people have used it. But it was actually to match in with something else, which then went bottom up. But however, the title made sense when I chose it. So yeah, officially that Cal is actually over, but for anybody participating, and to be honest, I'm not sure how many people are. You know, I'm not really getting updates on it. You know, if any of you are working on it, if you put up your pictures within the next week, I'll happily accept that as being part of the Cal, and I can see what I can do about getting something out to a couple of people. But yeah, I'm hoping to have this finished by next week. It should be just about finished by next week, I think. So I think if anybody gets it in before I finish mine, fair enough. But there's a thread over on the Knitteratti group on Facebook. Sorry, not on Facebook. On, sorry, the tiredness is getting to me. On Ravelry. More coffee needed, Linkle. Oh. Yes, it's over on the Knitteratti group on Ravelry. So that's Knitteratti spelled Knitteratti. The pattern is free. It's the Spring into Summer shawl. So if you haven't gotten a copy of that pattern yet, I suggest you pick it up soon, because it is possible that it will become paid I haven't set a date for when it's going to become paid, but at some point this will become a paid pattern. So definitely get over there. You don't need a coupon code, just download it and, you know, keep your copy safe so that you don't end up having to, you know, if you do decide you want to knit it, you won't have to pay for it then later. Okay. Oh, I'm feeling that this video is coming off as very lackluster this week, and I am sorry, guys. I think it's just a confluence of events. A good night's sleep would have done me the world of good. Now, this one is for... Sorry. This is the worst thing about having a very small area, because this is a really small area, which is why I don't show any more than what's here. That and with my camera and lighting and what have you, and I don't know what's up with the lighting today. I think it's because it's quite dark and rainy. You know, it just means that the space I have is teeny tiny. But yeah, this is the 1940s jumper that I'm making for the Bletchley Park initiative, the Knit One Post One, which I think is now... Oh, this is not my day. My camera just turned itself off just in the middle of my talking there. So, yeah, this is for the Knit One Post One in Bletchley Park, which I think they have all of the entries that they were looking for as far as I'm aware. And I've made a little progress on this since last week. I think I have had some issues with this, and it's me. It's not the pattern. It is most definitely me. It is me partially being tired, me thinking that I have the pattern down when I don't. And I think for the amount of hours I knit on this, which to be fair, it wasn't that much, but I probably spent just as much time thinking to make sure that I have it perfect. Because the thing is, this is going to be given away and hopefully it will be seen in public. And I want it right. So if I was just knitting this for me, I'd fudge it and I'd go, well, nobody's going to see that anyway. If anybody is looking that closely at my jumper, you know, it's a problem. They're being really invasive. But this is a different situation and it is being given away, and I do expect it to be scrutinised, and, you know, I would like it to be right. So I have, every time I've made a mistake in it, I have tinked back. And I know some people find that very frustrating. I suppose I see it as it's my choice. I don't have to tink back if I don't want to. But I would prefer to have it right. So I'm not going to get frustrated by it or upset. I mean, I'm a little peeved at myself because I have made one of the mistakes. I missed a row and it was because I thought I knew the pattern better than I did. And that was, you know, I think I deserve to be peeved at myself over that. You know, it's a silly mistake to make, especially when the row that I missed was so obvious. You know, it was the row where these decreases meet, and I actually got quite a bit further. I got onto the next bobble row, and then I had to go back several rows because it was like, what on earth did I do? So yeah, I was a little peeved at myself for not noticing sooner. But other than that, I am really enjoying it. You know, I'm just trying to not exactly stretch it out, but, you know, make sure that you're seeing everything. I'll show you the wrong side as well. So the wrong side is also quite pretty, but there are no bubbles. So I suppose technically you could wear it. Well, it's going to be seamed, so maybe not. But that would be a nice pattern on its own. This is the vintage 1940s pattern called Pamela. So if any of you want to look that up, by all means do. If you'd like to knit it, but don't fancy the bobbles, you know, this is a really nice alternative, I think. But I do love the bobbles, which is why I covered it last week. So if any of you do want to get the pattern and knit it and you're unsure of how to manage the bobbles, maybe it's a new skill for you, I covered that in last week's technical section. So don't be afraid of them. They're actually not that difficult. You know, you have to turn your work, but it's not a big deal. And the pattern, I mean, it's a 1940s pattern, so they don't necessarily hold your hand that much with it. For example, at the moment I am actually increasing at each end, and it tells you how often to do it, but I think in a modern pattern you would expect it to say say what to do with these extra stitches. So at the moment I have two more stitches on each end than I had when I started doing this lace and bobble pattern. And, with a modern pattern, it would tell you how many of those stitches there should be at the beginning. So say you'd get onto we'll say row 50, just picking a number. And it would say, knit 3 stitches, begin pattern, begin lace and bobble pattern or something like that. Whereas here it's just presumed that you're going to know where to start your pattern. And I mean, I'm fine with that because, I'm more experienced. I can read where to start my lace pattern and that's fine. But it is something to be aware of if you're considering doing a vintage pattern. Read it first and make sure that you understand where you're going with it, because I would imagine if you don't know what to do with those extra stitches or how many to count before you put in your yarn over or whatever, I can imagine that would be really very, very frustrating. And I'm not sure when they started calling them patterns as opposed to receipts or recipes. I've heard them called recipes a few times as well. But this, I think, would certainly come under the heading of more of a receipt than a pattern as we would know it today. It is very well written. There are a lot of instructions in it, but it does presume that you're going to be able to work out those little extra bits, So you get to a point where it just says increase increase 1 stitch at each end every however many rows. And that's it. It doesn't tell you. It doesn't even, well, I suppose it does say at the end of each row, but it doesn't tell you, do you do it directly at the end? So, should I knit front and back into the first stitch? Should I knit the first stitch and do an increase? It doesn't even tell you what type of increase to do. So these are just things to bear in mind. I suppose things that we might forget about, as being a difference between a more modern pattern and a vintage pattern. But I think that probably covers that for the moment. I am hoping to do a fair bit more work on this week because obviously I'm on a deadline to get that into them. Now I'm not up against the deadline, but I'd like to be finished and not be rushing and racing to get this done and get it out. So I think that's it for the main part of the podcast today. I feel as though I rushed everything. I do hope I didn't. And I hope I didn't rant too much. And I hope next week will be better, but I hope that every week. I like to see a little improvement, what I think is improvement every week. I'm going to leave the main section there. For the technical section, I am going to cover seed stitch, which I know is very simple. And I think a lot of you will already know it. But I'm also aware that there are some beginners watching, and I don't think I've covered seed stitch already. So I'm going to cover that just as a very basic stitch that anybody can do once you have knit and purl down. This is kind of a nice handy one to try. So thank you so much for watching this far, and for those of you who aren't going to watch the technical section, if you could please like and subscribe, it really, really helps. If you have any comments, please leave them below. I love to hear from everybody. I know I've probably been a bit, I sound a bit cranky this week, but no, I really do appreciate that people watch, and I love to see the comments coming in, and it kind of keeps me going, because there are certainly times when I'm like, well, maybe this isn't as successful as I would like it to be, and is there any point? But then I get a comment and it's like, oh, well, somebody's watching, so yay! Which is always good. And it does give me that little bit of extra to keep on with it. So yeah, and also, if you have any friends who you think might be interested, by all means, share a copy of this video, or just tell your friends in your local knitting group. You'd be surprised at how many people haven't heard of podcasts. So, it might be nice for them to try something new, have something to knit along with, or, just to watch while they're on the bus, or having a coffee, or whatever. Okay, so that's it for this week, and hopefully I will see some of you in just a moment for the technical section. Okay? back. Okay, so as I said, this week we're going to do seed stitch. And I've already started a little bit on a swatch here. So seed stitch is just alternating knit and purl stitches. I'm just trying to get this to focus a little better. There we go. So you alternate knit and purl stitches, but unlike ribbing, where you knit all of the knits and you purl all of the purls, in this case you purl the knits and you knit the purls. Now I'm going to explain what that means in a minute, but it's just something to keep in the back of your mind. The nice thing about moss stitch is that it's double-sided. So if you were to use this on a scarf or something like that, it would look the same on the front and on the back, and also it doesn't curl. So you don't need to worry about what's going to happen. You know, if you were to knit a scarf in stockinette stitch, the end and the edges would start to curl in on themselves. Well, that doesn't happen here. So it is a very simple but effective stitch, even using for borders or anything that you want to lie flat, or anything where you want to be able to see both sides and you want them to look the same. I actually think this is a really nice stitch for a men's scarf. In fact, I'm just giving myself some design ideas here to incorporate it into a men's scarf. But I mean, you could totally just take just this stitch and just, keep knitting in just this stitch, and maybe if you used a nice gradient yarn, it would be really, really effective. Okay. So, I suppose the first thing to do is work out if you're starting with a knit or a purl stitch. Now, just to start this swatch, I cast on 20 stitches. I started with the knit stitch and I did knit, purl, the whole way across. So we'll pretend that this is row 2, because it might as well be. Actually, pretend that this... Sorry. I'm terribly sorry, guys. My camera is not having any of it today. Okay. We'll actually pretend that this is row 3, because that's what it should be. So just looking at it here, I want to knit the purls and purl the knits. Okay. So I often find that the first stitch can be difficult to tell what it is, so we're just going to ignore that for a moment. So you can see here, the stitch just underneath the stitch on the needle. Sorry, focus is very important for this, which is why I keep fiddling with it, sorry. Okay, one last go. Let's try and force it to, there we go. Okay. So you can see this stitch here. You can see that this is a knit stitch. Okay, so it's nice and flat, and the bump is on the other side. Here we have a bump. So this is a purl stitch. This one is flat. It's a knit stitch. And this one actually does have the bump here. If I pull that yarn, you can see it. See the bump? That's a purl stitch. So I want to knit the purls, which means I'll start with a knit stitch here. Okay? So I knit, and then I do something about the focus and hope nobody notices my bad nail varnish. Knit, purl, knit, purl. And I do this the whole way across the row. So you can see this was a purl stitch. We have the bump. So I'm knitting it. And now when I knit it, above that bump is the flat part of the knit stitch. Okay. Here I have a knit stitch. So I want a bump on top of it, which means I need to purl. And you just continue with that the whole way across. So I'm just going to pause this here. I'm going to finish doing knit and purl across this row, and I'll be back in just a moment. Okay, and I'm back, and I'm just doing the last couple of stitches here. So we have a knit and a purl. Now, because I finished this row with the purl, when I turn it over and I want to start the next row, I start the next row with a purl. Okay? So if we examine it again, just to confirm what we've already spoken about, get the focus. You can see this is a nice flat stitch, so this needs to be purled to get the bump. This should be knit, and there's the flat stitch again. So definitely we can confirm the next stitch is a purl. Now, if you want to get an easy way of remembering what stitch you start with, say you were knitting a scarf or something, if you cast on an odd number of stitches, you will always start with the knit stitch. Okay, so the reason why it changes for me from knit to purl is because I have an even number of stitches. Now, I wanted to be able to show you how to read it and how to work out what your stitch should be. So that's why I went for 20 stitches. Sorry, my dog is about to start barking again. But if I were just casting on for a scarf, I will just cast on an extra stitch to make sure that it's an odd number. And that way I don't have to worry about it. I know every time I pick up my knitting, I'm looking for a knit stitch to begin the row. And that's all there is to it. I mean, the thing about it is, it can be a little bit more time consuming than just doing stockinette, because you have to take the time to move the yarn from the front to the back every time. Actually, I've presumed that you know how to do that, I'm sorry. So as you can see, I've just done a purl stitch here. So I take the yarn, which is in the front, I move it between the needles to the back, and then I knit. And from that knit stitch, I want to do a purl stitch next. So again, I take the yarn from the back, I bring it between the needles. So you can see, there's the needles, I bring it between them. I bring it to the front. Sorry, try to focus there. Bring it to the front, which is where I need it to purl, and then I purl. So it is a little time consuming, which is why I often will only use seed stitch as an element of a pattern, not as the entire pattern. And you can see I'm ending on a knit stitch there because I have an even number of stitches. If I had an odd number of stitches, I would always end on a purl. Would that make sense? Yeah. Sorry, if I had started out with the knit stitch and I had an odd number of stitches, then I will always end with a purl. So that when I turn it over, no, sorry, I will always end with the knit. That's it, I'm confusing myself, my apologies. If you have an odd number of stitches and you begin with the knit, you will always end with the knit. So if you get to the end of your row and you know you have an odd number of stitches and you're ending with a purl, you have a problem. And you need to go back and find it. You know, these are things that you should remember just to make your knitting a little bit easier. It means that you don't do what I did with my yellow jumper that I'm knitting and go 4 or 5 rows on and then realize you've made a mistake. So yeah, if you have an even number of stitches and you start with a purl, you will end with a knit. If you have an odd number of stitches and you start with a purl, you will end with a purl. So if you've an odd number of stitches and you start with a knit, you will always end with a knit. Okay? I think that makes sense. If I'm not explaining it very well, please do let me know in the comments and I'll see if I can clarify that a little bit. But yeah, like I was saying, it is a little bit more time consuming than some of the other stitches because you're swapping back and forth and back and forth. And, you know, I get the same thing with ribbing where it's, you know, back and forth and, you know, it can become a little bit monotonous, but to be honest, I think it's totally worth it for the effect. You know, it's actually quite a sturdy material. There is some give to it, but it's not, you know, it's not like something with eyelets or even ribbing where there's a lot of give to it. It is quite sturdy. So even if you did want to knit yourself a little purse or something like that, seed stitch would be a lovely stitch to use for that. So there you go. I think that's it for this week. As I said before, please do like and subscribe, and hopefully when I'm back next week, the dog barking issue will be solved and I might actually be a little bit more awake. I know most people would have taken a break this week, but you know, I've committed to getting these out to you guys, so I thought I would forge ahead anyway, because if I didn't do it now, it just wasn't going to get done. So like I said, please leave me a comment if there's anything that you'd like me to work on next week, or you know, if you'd like me to redo this tutorial, if there's something that you felt wasn't clear. Okay, well, thank you for watching, guys, and hopefully I'll talk to you all soon. Take care.